Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, and a good morning to you. It's June, June 1, ladies and gentlemen, and it's shaping up to be a hot one. Weather report. Oh boy. So the thing passed the House. I'm not looking, and you know that. I have the debt ceiling thing, so now we can go on and wring our hands over what the Senate's going to do. And I saw that Bernie Sanders says he ain't voting for it. And it's the Democrats who put it over in the Republican-controlled House because they're responsible adults as opposed to the preening provocateurs of the Republican Party. Just a note, the new congressperson from my district, representing Pittsburgh, Summer Lee, voted no, which would not, I suspect, have been the vote of her predecessor. So, pointing it out. The sweetest thing that happened to me the other day, and I feel I didn't do the right thing. I feel bad, but I'm sure it's not that big. It's one of those things where, just leave it. Stop already. It was so sweet. My neighbors have two little boys, and the 3-year-old, who I hadn't really ever had an extended conversation with before, I had a slightly extended conversation. And he said, out of the blue, he said, "Would you like a piece of my birthday cake?" And I didn't say yes or I said, "Is it your birthday?" And yeah. And he was just 3. And I ended up saying, "No, thank you, honey." But I was thinking I should have said yes to this. When a sweet child like that offers you something precious to him, you don't turn it down. God. But anyway, it remains, despite my recriminations to myself, it remains a sweet little happening. So, just wanted to share that with you because sweet stuff happens. Did I tell you I was watching a movie, an old movie? I probably did. See, this is a problem. Well, we all have this problem. We can't remember who we told what. I was watching a movie, and all of a sudden there's somebody in it, and I know it. And it takes me a second, and I say, "Tucker!" Not Carlson. "Tucker!" This was a person I have not seen on a screen or in person for, good God, over 50 years. Over 50 years. And he and I are 50 years plus, obviously, since. And yet there he so clearly was. It was Tucker. And I must say, the movie was I think, at least 15 years old. So he wasn't as ridiculously old as we both are. But there he was. And I know him because he went to the acting school with me, the neighborhood playhouse. And I've seen very few of us, the young people in that class, in movies or on TV. I've seen some in commercials here and there, and you see that, boy, some of those people really did make a career. It is so hard to do. I mean, the one I've talked about before that obviously made a career was Jeff Goldblum, because he was in that class as well. But there was Tucker, and I actually I looked him up. He was, as I recall, the only Black student. If I'm not remembering this right, I'm sorry, but I can't think of another Black student. And he was different from all of us. Not because we were white and he was Black, but because he was one of two men in the class who had just returned from Vietnam, from the war. So this places it, right? It would have been 1969, 1970. And he and the other guy, they were wound really tight. So no one talked about PTSD or any of that stuff. But so I'm thinking of how Tucker, and remembering him, how he must have used acting to, I don't know, deal with the demons he was dealing with. And just to make sure, I mean, I had it right, I did Google him to see if anything would come up. And yes, something did. His name is Tucker Smallwood. I don't think he ever made it big, or we would all know his name, but he clearly has made a career. And I found out something I did not know about him, because his Wikipedia says this, that he was in the United States Army Airborne Infantry, and he was commander of a mobile advisory team. Nearly fatally wounded in action and pronounced dead. I don't know how could he have been pronounced dead. I know the guy. In 1969. Okay. And after recovering, he moved to New York City, where he studied acting at the Neighborhood Playhouse. Okay. So I don't think if he was pronounced dead in 69, I suspect Tucker and I were at the Neighborhood Playhouse, but then it would be 70 or so, 70, because it couldn't be after that. Anyway, wow. Isn't that weird when you sort of bump into people and there they are and you go reeling back into your life, a different time? I'm glad he I'm glad he did it, because that was not the norm for anybody who wanted to be an actor. I mean, most never, ever make a living, by far. Most don't ever make a living. And he clearly and apparently has. So there's that. And I don't even know why I'm sharing that with you, except I just can't get him off my mind. Oh, I have to share this with you. This is good, and then I'll get into the depressing stuff, okay? A friend sent me this. It's just a screenshot of an article in the New York Times in the year 1923. So this is from the New York Times, 1923, and it's Dateline, Pittsburgh, PA, May 24. It has one of the longest sentences I've ever seen, a first sentence, that pretty much the reporter, like, literally did the who, what, where, when, and why, maybe not the why, in one sentence. But listen to this. 1923 May, special to the New York Times. With the arrest of 6 youths, members of prominent families of the East End and Oakland districts during the last week, and the recovery of 93 automobiles valued at about $100,000, which the young men are alleged to have stolen in the last 4 months to take their girlfriends for theft. I can't read this. To take their girlfriends for joyrides. The police, we're still at the end of the sentence, for joyrides, the police believe that the theft of scores of automobiles stolen in this city in the last 6 months will now be cleared up. That's the sentence. So, 6 boys belonging to prominent families residing in the East End and Oakland neighborhoods. Yeah, that's where all the rich folks had their mansions, right? Turns out they had stolen 93 cars in 6 months. And what, at a value of $100,000, I mean, in today's dollars, what would that be? Over $1 million? I don't know. My God, the upsetting thing about this article is they don't name names. But 1923, what do you think some of the last names of some of those kids were? And I wonder if anybody really, they didn't end up in jail, right? It says the only other thing here is the youths were arraigned in morals court and held for court under $1,000 bail each. According to the police, the boys made confessions. Following the joyride, the young men would take their companions home and then abandon the machines. So I wonder who was Scaife, Mellons. I mean, one can only imagine. One can only imagine there's so many of those families. But I don't know. Anyone wants to try it? It's May of, and this is not a Pittsburgh paper, so it's special to the New York Times. May 24, I would think the Pittsburgh papers, May 24, 1923, if anyone wants to go hunting, might find something more interesting with a little more detail. The little rich boys. Incredible. So I wanted to share that with you. And then there's this. I woke up about 1:30 this morning. And I don't know that I ever really went back to sleep. So if I'm a little giddy or strange today, and it is because, and I'm sure I'm not the only person with this, I hope, temporary affliction. But it is a direct result of what happened at Tree of Life. Because I've been reading about the testimony, I've mostly been, actually almost all been using, I don't do the PG anymore. So I don't know about their coverage. I've been reading the Jewish Chronicle. I've been reading WESA. I've been reading the Trib. And it's just, if I'm struggling and not sleeping, I can't imagine what those more closer to the victims. I knew 3. I knew more by sight because I'd see them around. But none were close friends. The two I knew most, one of whom testified yesterday, the other who was unable to because he's dead, is Dan Legger. And I don't know that I know finer men than those two. And if you read about the testimony, you know that they heard the shots. They were together. They heard the shots. And because they were caregivers, Jerry Rabinowitz is his name. Jerry Rabinowitz was a doctor, and Dan was a nurse and a chaplain. And just these were such good men. So they hear the shots. They were with one other person. I think they were joking around, and they were like making lunch or something for after services or something. They were going to have sort of like Christians will call a Bible study. They were doing Torah study. And they were joking around, and they heard what certainly seemed to be gunshots. Of the three, one had just completed active shooting training at his workplace. He heard the guns, it kicked in, and he ran away from the sound. He was not carrying his cell phone because observant Jews often don't carry money or phones, and they don't answer phones on the Sabbath. And so quite a few of the people did not have phones, Dan Legger being another. But because the guy who ran, a guy named Martin Gaynor, and is alive now to tell the tale, I think actually he has died since, I'm not sure. He had to run to a house near Tree of Life to ask them to call 911. Meanwhile, 911 was being called. But the doctor and the nurse from Rabinowitz and Legger, they run toward the sound. And Rabinowitz is killed immediately. Now, the thing, I was saying it's too bad that there has to be this trial and people have to relive this trauma, but I'm starting to rethink that, because from what I can tell, the historical record that is being created by these stories is an incredibly important one. I had been in Jerry Rabinowitz's house. I know his widow. I also know that he was planning on going to Africa to work with a doctor who my brother knows and who my brother thinks is a saint, a guy named Rick Hodes, Hodes. I swear I have his, looking right here, I think I have his card here. Yes. Rick Hodes, he lives in Ethiopia, and he fixes does constant surgeries on people with deformed spines. He's been there forever doing this work. Also a very observant Jew. And Jerry Rabinowitz, when I later found out, was going to work with Rick Hodes, which I thought it figures. Those are two guys made out of the same wondrous stuff. The desire to help people. He's killed immediately. And Dan, right after him, is shot as well, and somehow does not die. It is amazing that he didn't die. Had a gazillion surgeries. He was grievously wounded. Because he worked in hospice care, I know, a lot. He knew he was dying. And he said, I mean, my God, what these people did. He said the Jewish prayer for forgiveness for himself. I better learn that prayer. I don't know that I know it. And Dan said yesterday under oath, I reviewed my life and thought about the wonder of my life and the beauty of it and the happiness I had experienced. The joy of having two sons, wife, all the wonderful friends I had in this world. Can you imagine? I mean, they say, right? What do you grow up hearing? Your life, like, flashes before your eyes. Well, there's this contemplative, yes. And in some ways, for a life well lived, I guess it makes you ready to go. I have to say that reading the accounts of the people before the attack, like the janitor who'd worked at Tree of Life for 25 years, Augie Siriano. He did what he always did on Saturday mornings. He ate bagels and drank tea with the two brothers who were killed there, David and Cecil Rosenthal, both of whom had intellectual disabilities, is how it is put. I would see, I'm not sure which one, often standing on the corner of Wilkins and Shady across from Tree of Life at the bus stop. I see him often, and I often wondered about him and who he was. Well, now I know. And Siriano, the janitor, had been doing this for a long, long time because these two brothers would show up. They had the task somebody had given them of greeting the people who came to worship. And the janitor, Augie Siriano, would help them tie their ties and tie their shoes, which he did that day. They would be dead within a half hour. And another survivor says that when he arrived, he saw one of the brothers talking to this old guy, Melvin Wax, 87 years old. And one of the things that the testimony shows is Melvin Wax, who was 87, would never park his car in the parking lot because it wasn't a huge parking lot. And he felt that old people, who had difficulty maybe getting around should have those spaces. So Melvin Wax, 87, would always park around the block, around the corner. And Melvin apparently was known for telling endless jokes. Endless jokes, never repeating one. And poor Cecil, who was stuck with him, was telling him he couldn't understand what Wax was saying. And Cecil's trying to tell Wax, this is told by another survivor, Barry Horber. Cecil's like saying, I don't understand. I don't understand what you're, and Wax, the 87-year-old who's telling the joke, was pretty much deaf. So he couldn't hear Cecil saying he didn't understand, and he kept telling the jokes, and then apparently Cecil just thought, I can't, and he walked away. You know, these Melvin Wax, by the way, when the shooting started, went and hid in a closet with two other people. And he alone of the three was killed. Probably, again, because his hearing wasn't good or who knows what, but he had opened the door to the closet just a crack, thinking it was over. And bang, he was blown away and fell back into the closet. And then the killer comes in. The closet was dark. And the killer did not see the other two. They stayed in that closet for another 40 minutes before the police found them, and they had to step over the body. Of Melvin Wax. You know, you read this and people are fleshed out. And I just haven't been able. It woke me. It woke me. This is where hate leads. And the hate that led to this is very much alive and well and growing. I shared with you this email that I received yesterday from somebody who I realized had gotten in touch with me once before. And the other time he got in touch with me, I also informed the Jewish community security head, and they had also suggested I let the police know. So I had done that. This guy is known to the FBI. He is known to the police. And he obviously knows me, or he knows to send me this stuff, which is, somewhat disquieting. And so after the show yesterday, I took my sister's advice, and I called the United Jewish Federation, because I know they have a very, they have a secure, and I just asked for the security office, and I was greeted with an automated message saying there is nobody. This is the Jewish Federation security office. If this is a true emergency, call 911. There is nobody here now to take your call. But you leave a message, blah, 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 blah. So I remember, I think I started out, and I'm sorry I did, but I did say, do you know how I said, I hope you realize how ironic it is to be calling you and to not get a person. Because anyone calling you really wants to talk to somebody. And then I told them who I was and this thing I'd gotten. And I said, I suspect you already know of this. But I wanted you to know, and I wanted to know if I was supposed to contact anybody else, and I left my number. Nobody called back. I called the FBI at the same time. I went through so many press one if it's this, two if it's that. I'd press a number and get another whole one if it's this, two if it's that. I swear I was on the phone for, 30, 45 minutes, and I hung up. So I have to say that was also unsettling. But this hate that is loose in the land is really extraordinary. And every person in this country has only one question to ask themselves, it seems to me, before they vote again or whatever. And that is this the country I want to live in with this hate afoot and people acting on it and people dying because of it? And if so, do I speak out? I mean, okay, do I speak out? Do I keep my head down, stay quiet? Do I support it? Or do I say it has nothing to do with me and so who cares? I think it's that last one that most people end up at. And I put that under the heading of indifference. And it is the people who choose indifference that allow evil to flourish, because I think they tend to be the largest group. And that is a group that no moral person should ever find themselves a member of. Now, lest you think I'm just talking about, the increase in anti-Semitism here, I am most assuredly am not. I read today, that the Pittsburgh Pride Festival is getting underway, and the Pittsburgh Pride Parade, I believe, is Saturday. I read also something, and I'm going to use the word again because it's a state I find myself in consistently now, and it's not indifferent, not an indifferent state, it's a disquieted state. I read that the people who are putting on the Pittsburgh Pride Parade are spending 1/3 of their budget on private security. Now, understand, a big event like that, a parade downtown, gets a lot of, public security, police security. They're spending 1/3 of the budget and have been fundraising specifically for security to keep the people who will come to their event safe. It was said there have been no credible threats that have been received, but any person in their right mind would know that a gay rights pride parade in this America is a target, potential target. Because we know who's doing the killing, and we know who they come for. They don't like gays either. Do you know how much of the budget of the gay pride used to be for security? Private security, 5%. So this is the new normal, but prior to this was not the norm. And I want to talk about this growing acceptance of anti-gay, homophobic, unbelievably homophobic stuff going on. You know, every time our side thinks, well, we won that, we did that, the other side, smoldering with fury and hate, just keeps coming back. And they're back with a vengeance. And I'm not just talking about this country. I'm talking about a country like, well, I mentioned yesterday, Uganda, where to be gay is to flirt with the death penalty. I'm talking about Turkey, a member of NATO, one of our allies, where a strong man, Erdogan, just won his runoff election. And mostly because, again, hearkening back to what I was talking about yesterday, apparently the people who put him over the top are God-fearing Muslim women. Of that strong man. During this campaign that he won, let me tell you something of what Erdogan said. And if you are a gay person in Turkey, you tell me how you're going to be feeling in terms of your security. Erdogan got a lot of those religious votes by demonizing gay people. He had a stump speech, in which actually his victory speech, he said that family is sacred for us and that LGBT people would never infiltrate his party. Who infiltrates? Where do you use that verb? The enemy. So your gay neighbors, your gay friends, they're the enemy, he is saying. And he frequently attacked gays on the stump. He called them deviants. And he said they are spreading like the plague. This is classic hate-mongering, dehumanizing verbiage that results in people dying. First, you dehumanize them, gays, Jews, blacks. First, you immigrants, you dehumanize them, and you suggest that they are the reason for all your troubles. And the next thing you know, they're being slaughtered by the people listening to these leaders, like Erdogan, like Donald Trump. These are leaders, and in both cases, elected by the people. I don't know what the hell that says. You know, it reminds me of something. I think I pulled it out here. Yeah. Brett Stevens, who usually annoys the hell out of me, I think he has said something that's worth noting. He talks about, you just can't believe, you know, he talks about Erdogan winning. And he says there's a lesson in Erdogan's win for those of us who think Trump can't win again. And he said it's because we don't understand. why they vote for these people, why others vote for these people that we just see as unabashedly evil. And Bret Stephens says, you know, despite James Carville's famous slogan, it's the economy, stupid, right? Bret Stephens says, actually, no, it is not that. Never is. Anytime you can fit it on a bumper sticker, you gotta be a little skeptical. So Stephens says this, and it's worth noting. No, it's not just the economy, stupid. It's also God, tradition, values, identity, culture, and the resentment, he says, that go with each. Now, I find that interesting. He is saying that resentment comes with identity and culture and God and tradition. I don't understand. That's what I don't understand, the resentment. And he says only a denuded secular imagination, I guess that's what I have, fails to notice that there are things people care about more than their paycheck. And that a lot of people, and here's what we do not recognize, are thrilled by power and those who exercise it. He says exaltation of it. And so he says, so this is just a reminder that the political signals are often transmitted at frequencies that liberal ears have trouble hearing. If you're wondering, how could Trump possibly be reelected? How does Erdogan get reelected? Now, he says they don't care so much about winning. They nightmare. He says the Trump movement, it isn't built on the prospect of winning. Think of that. It isn't built on the prospect. You know, you're thinking, wait a minute, all these Republican states are, they're banning abortion left, right, and center. They're going after, education, teaching, all this stuff. And all the polls show most people don't want it. How would any political party in a democracy go out of its way to do things that most people don't want? Wouldn't that be political suicide? And he says this movement that they have is not built on the prospect of winning. It's built on a sense of belonging, of being heard and seen, of being a thorn in the side. People like you and me, people who you sense despise you and whom you despise in return. It's built on a willingness to submit for the sake of representation. All the rest, victory, defeat, prosperity, misery, is detail. That phrase you often hear, owning the libs, that desire to annoy us, to poke at us, to do anything to get our goat is much more an animating principle than the economy. Stupid. How often have we asked ourselves, how do these people vote against their own interests? If they voted for the economy, for policies that would help people like them, they'd vote for Democrats. That's not why they're voting. They're voting for a tribe, an identity, and a strong man who will represent them, and they will submit. Wow. I asked earlier, I was telling about those, little rich kids in 1923 here stealing all those cars in Pittsburgh. The cars were said to be worth $100,000. And I said, what would that be worth today? Like about $1 million. And actually, Milton's done the math. $100,000 in 1923 is worth $1,774,000 and change today. Wow. Whoa. So, a lot of heavy stuff, I know. Okay, wait a minute, I lost my screen. Do you know what? In 2009, is what? That's some time ago now. That's a bit ago. 2009. Do you know what the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage was in 2009? It was, hang on here, I got it, $7.25 in 2009. And I would think anybody making $7.25 an hour in 2009 was not exactly living high on the hog, right? Okay. I'm just pointing it out because what was the minimum wage in 2010? $7.25. How about 2011? $7.25. 12, $7.25. 2013, $7.25. 2014, $7.25. 2015, $7.25. You just saw from Milton's calculation here how inflation makes $7.25 in 2009 ain't $7.25 now. And what's the federal minimum wage? Did it ever go up? Did it? I know in 22 it was still $7.25. How is that even possible? Vote for Republicans. Oh, man. They vote for cruelty. Speaking of money, did you see Pittsburgh's not, as of last year, they can't open all the swimming pools, the public pools. And by the way, this is not necessarily a Pittsburgh, this is not a local issue. Been reading tons of articles in the New York Times about the New York pools aren't opening. Pools all over the country are not opening. Why? Because they can't find lifeguards. Who are lifeguards? They're young people, younger people, right? That was a job young people did. What do people do now? What do young people do now? Do they get a better deal somewhere else? Because I'm seeing what Pittsburgh was paying. First of all, you have to have training. I mean, you have to know how to save somebody. But I would think being a lifeguard at a swimming pool is a little less daunting than a lifeguard at an ocean beach. But What do I know? Anyway, we can't find enough lifeguards in all of Allegheny County. Why? Is it because people know the sun isn't good for you anymore? Don't the lifeguards get to sit under an umbrella? Is it what they're paying? Because in Pittsburgh, a lifeguard gets, more than twice as much as a federal minimum wage. Gets $16 an hour. That ain't bad. Ain't great, but it ain't bad. $16 an hour for sitting outside and watching people splash around and screaming at them all the time. So one of the things the city did when they saw that they weren't going to be able to open the pools or anywhere near as many of them, and because they don't have the lifeguards, is that somebody said, well, maybe we need to pay them more. If we can entice them if we pay them more. So that was decided that was a good idea. So you know what they're saying now? Instead of $16 an hour, they're going to pay $16.48 an hour. Now, I'm telling you, when it comes to enticement, I believe is the word they used, I don't think that's going to do it. I think we need to raise it. All right. I mean, from 1648, that'd be it. I wonder if 1649 was voted down as a little excessive. Oh, God. So, Greg Sargent in the Washington Post today has a hopeful article about one of the reddest counties in Florida, a county that voted for Hernando County, voted for DeSantis by, just a ridiculous 41-point margin. Okay, so it's DeSantis country. And this is the same district that some poor fifth grade teacher showed a Disney movie that had an openly gay character in it. And now she is, I guess, no longer a teacher. So there was a school board meeting at this place, and a lot of students showed up. I think it's something, we were talking before, I think, with Susan about how one thing to have a shortage of lifeguards, a shortage of police, a shortage of teachers, and we got it. Who wants to be a teacher in this Republican environment, this hate-filled, fear-mongering environment? And the fact is in that district alone, 50 teachers say that they are going to be resigning, that they just can't do it anymore. They're saying, look, this was always a difficult job, but you did it because you felt a sense of reward, that you were impacting the lives of these young people. For many, it's a calling, but they just can't do it with the state looking over their shoulders and parents looking over their shoulders. Greg Sargent talks about one teacher who stood up in this, and this takes courage in this environment. She's Alyssa Morano. She stood up. Oh, no, she's resigned. That's why she's able to speak out. Oh, that's interesting. She's already resigned. And she told the board, I keep hearing how supposedly we're teaching your kids to be gay. And then she said this, sometimes they are gay. I have math to teach. I literally don't have time to teach your kids to be gay. Another teacher who said he thinks he's going to have to retire. Daniel Scott, he said, I don't feel that I can adequately provide a safe environment for my students anymore. The draconian working conditions are causing many, such as myself, to abandon this honored career. So students got up and they spoke. You think this is a war on woke? One student said. It's more like a war on your children's future. But the other side was loudly there as well. The good news in this piece is that our side, even in a deep red DeSantis-loving district like this, the other side is now showing up and pushing back. Another student said, it's me and my fellow students who are feeling the effects of all this that you're doing. Taking books from our classroom, that's what's really indoctrinating students. So it turns out that there is this growing movement by parents who believe in education all over, red states, blue states, purple states. They're organizing. They're starting to pressure their school boards, and they're running for office. And that is what we have to do. So I was talking before about, we all have choices to make. You can get on board. You can say, I'm opposed to that. Or you can be indifferent. And getting on board and indifference are just representing too many people. We've got to start pushing back. 9 Democratic governors have gotten together and sent a letter to the companies that publish the textbooks who are caving left and right to the DeSantises, to Texas and Florida, because they have such huge student populations, and they can say, we don't want a history book that has all this slavery stuff in it, or talks about how bad we are, or this, that, and the other thing. And they're capitulating. So Democratic governors are starting to push back. And they're saying they are watching. And we are not going to be buying books that are inappropriately censored. So I guess things always have to get to this sort of frightening level. And believe me, what we're seeing now is nowhere near as frightening as it can get. And we aren't even talking about the robots today. No. Dear God. So anyway, I'm just begging anybody with the means, the ability, if you're an old fart like me, there's always a telephone, there are letters to be written, there are calls to be made, there's grunt work to do. There is whatever. We all need to start doing more, not just yapping, which of course is my habit. I don't know if you think this is good news or not, but I'm putting it out there as good news to end. The football teams are starting their summer camps and stuff like that. Damar Hamlin of McKees Rocks is at camp at Buffalo Bills training camp. He's had his second on-field workout since he essentially died of cardiac arrest on the field during a game this year. No, last year. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I mean, you can say, well, if he's 25 years old, he should, fine, stop it. Find something else to do. But it's what he wants to do, and it's just amazing that he's back. So I just want to point that out if you didn't know. And that's it for me. I'm going out in this sweltering sun, and I'm going to dig around in my flower pots a little bit. Okay? I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll be back Monday. Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.